It's Wednesday, August 19th. We appreciate you joining us for Facebook Live. This is our weekly session where we try to engage the public as much as possible on a variety of topics, of course, related to the coronavirus and how it's impacting our lives and how we can move together in a progressive manner with regards to making today better than yesterday and tomorrow better than today. And as far as today's session, we have an exciting, I think, panel with regards to Sangamon County Clerk Don Gray and Matt Dietrich from the Illinois State Board of Education, or I'm sorry, Elections. He's probably glad he's not in education. And then also with regards to Frank Lesko, City Clerk, may be joining us. But today's topic is going to be really diving into the election process that's coming up. It's been in a lot of conversation from the national level to the state level to the local level, and we have the individuals that can answer your questions. So as we progress through the discussion, if you'd like to send in your questions, you can do so through the chat or the feed through Facebook, or you can always send in your questions directly to feedback@springfield.il.us. That's the city's email address. And with all your information that you'd like to receive on the coronavirus, we do have a web portal set up on the city's website at springfield.il.us. And it does have links to the various State Department or federal CDC guidelines, things of that nature, as well as what we're doing locally related to the coronavirus. So the exciting week this week, of course, is with school starting, parochial schools in particular. We had that discussion last week. School District 186 decided to go remote, and I know the parochial ones are doing full in-class learning. Chatham School District, they did vote to do a hybrid model. And I'm not up to speed on other ones. I think Riverton decided to go full attendance. And so we're supportive of all the educational leaders, just like us in government or in business or wherever you work. Tough decisions have to be made, but what we should always do is share your ideas. If you want to critique, offer better suggestions, so be it, but we should be supportive of one another. I've seen on occasion where people just try to blame individuals. Nobody's responsible for the coronavirus. We can all take responsibility for stopping the spread, but we need to do our part in supporting one another. So we do support each and all the leaders of the educational community. As Dr. Fauci has said, it's really a local decision because they know best their students, the student base that they're trying to serve, and each one's different. So we applaud all of them for the service that they've provided, whether they're doing remote, whether they're doing hybrid or in-person learning. It's important that they engage the public as much as possible. In this area, I think they've all done a great job in moving forward and with confidence. The main thing is that we stop the spread as much as possible, so the social distance remains to be important. Using the face covering to cover your nose and mouth is very important because there is no vaccine as of yet. And so we have been proactive in going out to visiting the businesses, especially the restaurants and bars. Yeah, Clerk, I think we're getting feedback, so if you could put your thing on mute, we'd appreciate it. Anyway, with regards to that, it's important that we comply as much as possible. We have been getting complaints. I'll just point out one, Weebles, that they're having a North End fair. Since this is great weather, would have been a great fair weather, but unfortunately, with the situation we're at, the fair has been canceled. But there are individuals supporting one another, allowing food vendors to participate out at Weebles locally. It's not within the city, but I know Fire Chief Riney's gone out there and looked, and the food setup is socially distant, and they are keeping track of how to best provide that service to individuals that want to partake. And so I think public health has been out there and viewed the situation. You might see a lot of cars associated with that, but they do have space where they can do the distancing. So we do still receive complaints, and we respond to it with our police and fire department. And again, we really appreciate everybody's cooperation, everybody's diligence, and everybody's support as we move forward in the pandemic. So with that, I ask each one of you, and I'll start with Don Gray, County Clerk, Sangamon County Clerk Don Gray, if you'd like to share a little insight of the challenges you face on the county level, but even on the personal level, anything you'd want to share with us. And then we'll go through each introduction. And then after that, I do have a few questions, and we'll open up that discussion related specifically to the election process coming up in November. So Don, thanks for being on. If you'd like to share with us the challenges you face as an elected official and anything you'd like to share with your office and serving the public, we'd appreciate it during this challenging time.
Thank you, Mayor. It's quite an honor to be here. I appreciate you having me on to kind of talk about what those challenges are and how we're adapting our services to, best service Sangamon County and, of course, the city of Springfield. I think the greatest challenge from the county clerk's office that we found is how can we best adapt our services to be much more remote. I think that you can appreciate, Mayor, that you can find in government older operating systems that really weren't structured to be able to perform at a more flexible, adaptive nature and uniqueness of the environment in which we're dealing with today. The county clerk's office has a variety of services that we provide, from marriage licensing to the issuance of birth records to death records. And these are important everyday records that are required for people to, take part in different things of society that are required. So, we've got to continue to facilitate these services and do it well, even in difficult, challenging times in which we can't congregate amongst each other. So we've really worked and dug deep to find online systems, to increase our online access and systems, to streamline them, to provide more education and knowledge to how to utilize our online systems and transact much more remotely so that we're still accomplishing the goal. We're providing great quality customer service, and our clients are receiving the benefits of their government in which they deserve. So that's a lot of what we've been working with. I know we're going to get specific into elections here soon. This is certainly a unique election cycle for us as we're seeing a transition of the means in which ballots will be cast here in Sangamon County comparative to the history of what we traditionally see. And, we're working hard to develop those options of voting and access to the democratic process that are safe, secure, and with at the forefront of every thinking and decision making we're making to the health of our registered voters of Sangamon County.
I appreciate that. And you mentioned permitting and registrations, things of that nature. How much has that dropped off with your office? And have you been, I guess, how difficult was it to kind of, with the request, especially, you went from March, April, May, to even, figure out how to provide those services when people, weren't allowed to come in or what have you during the stay-at-home order? Yeah, if you could shed some light on, have things picked up, or have you really seen a drop-off, or you can shed some light on that?
So certainly in the early on days of the development of COVID-19, there was a significant drop-off. Encouraging though, what we found was that it actually stayed rather stable as we became more knowledgeable about the intricacies of COVID-19 and how we can adapt to our online services. So it really ramped up pretty quickly for us once we were able to properly educate how we could best help, how we could facilitate our services. The marriage licensing process really maintained a very high level of service throughout, regardless of COVID-19. The same with the issuance of birth records. And what we found was that the state of Illinois had requirements of proving birth and marriage records for insurance purposes for state insurance. Well, we obviously have a larger constituents of state employees. So this was a time actually when they had more time on their hands to think about the things they needed in the future to make those types of requests of our office. So we were actually getting much more inundated by folks that could take advantage of the convenience of the online services while they had this time in difference of not being at the daily grind of the job. So we've been fairly busy all the way throughout. As you know, there's just certain services in government that have to maintain and keep moving forward, and we just find a way to get that done and do the very best of it every day.
Yeah, and I can speak firsthand. The babies keep coming because my son, they had their grandbaby during the pandemic, and there's no stopping it. And we have a great medical community. And what's really challenging for the new parents, and I think we take it kind of for granted. You know, I went through Lamaze class. I'm sure everybody has with regards to that, but they weren't able to afford that luxury. So it's almost baptism by fire when you're going through that process. And it's that really goes to show the support network that's greatly needed that we sometimes take for granted on a daily basis. So we appreciate you providing that service as we move through these challenging times. Next, I'd ask Matt Dietrich to introduce himself and speak with regards to the State Board of Elections. And I think you used to, if you want to give a little background about yourself, he has an interesting background. Weren't you at SJR for a period of time? And whatever you'd like to share, but also with the State Board of Elections, how's that kind of integrated or interacting throughout the state, especially with the clerk's offices? So Matt.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. My name is Matt Dietrich, and I'm the Public Information Officer with the Illinois State Board of Elections. And I spent 22 years, in fact, at the State Journal Register from 1990 till 2012, covering everything from I was a general assignment reporter and right on up through, I covered during the 90s, I did a lot of coverage of arts and television, radio broadcasting in Springfield. Then I was on the editorial page from 2002 up until I was the editorial page editor when I left in 2012 I started a website called Reboot Illinois that was covered state government basically. And then I came to the State Board of Elections as their first public information officer in January of 2018. So came just in time to field a million questions about cybersecurity in 2018 and about the Russians interfering in our elections. And then just in time for, of course, this historic COVID election that we're going through now. A little background on what the State Board of Elections does and doesn't do. We are the administrator of elections in Illinois. We do not conduct any voting. We do not register any voters. What we do is we maintain a statewide voter registration database as required under federal law. So Don Gray in Sangamon County and the 107 other local election authorities do all of the actual registrations of voters, and then we keep a central database of all of that registration information. It's updated daily, actually nightly. Every night, all 108 local election authorities upload their new voter registration information to us so that we have the most current database possible. It's the local election authorities who actually conduct the elections. They are the ones who set up the polling places. They're responsible for recruiting the election judges and staffing those polling places on election day and for the early voting sites as well. We assist the local election authorities by providing judge training is one of our big things that we do. I don't think we do judge training for Sangamon. Some of the bigger jurisdictions do their own judge training, but we help with the ones that need it. We have staff who go out. They're assigned to geographic zones throughout the state, so they assist in judge training there. We also operate the Illinois Cyber Navigator program, which all of the local election authorities are involved in. That's something that began in 2018, and it sort of came from an event that I'm sure all the viewers here probably heard of, probably know about. Back in July of 2016, the Illinois State Board of Elections was the victim of a data breach in which an intruder broke into the statewide registration database. It didn't end up having any effect on the election in 2016. They weren't able to change anything in that database. And the whole thing was actually caused by a mistake on our part. We were doing maintenance on our system, and a window was, an intruder was able to get in that way. But that changed the way that we handled data, got us involved with the Department of Homeland Security. We've had scans, security scans on a regular basis ever since then. And that was what gave birth to the idea of the Cyber Navigator program, which the intent is to make sure that every local election authority in Illinois has access to the same training and resources that we have at the state level, and that some of our larger jurisdictions like Sangamon County, of course, you know, Chicago, the collar counties, Champaign, Rockford, those sizable, more populous election jurisdictions generally have pretty robust IT staffs devoted strictly to elections. We want to make sure that every election authority in Illinois has that access to the same hardware, training, software. So we administer grant funding through, we get federal grants through the Help America Vote Act, and through the Cyber Navigator program. If a jurisdiction has needs, you know, for, let's say, updating their servers, buying new PCs, buying new software, all that kind of stuff, they can apply to us for grants, and we can help them. You know, if you're a small rural county clerk's office, if you need, you know, $5,000, $10,000 worth of new computers, that can be a pretty heavy ask for a very small county government. You can come to us though, and we're, you know, our minimum grant through the Cyber Navigator program is $10,000. Everybody gets at least that much, and we can help you pay for it. We also have Cyber Navigators. These are 10 individuals who go work with the individual county clerks and board of elections to answer any questions that they have, to help them interpret information that we get through our information sharing systems that we have throughout the country. But anyway, that's what we do. We work with the local election authorities. We don't conduct any elections on our own. One of our biggest duties is working with them after the election. Before we certify the vote officially statewide, we assist them in doing the canvass of their vote, so that when we certify the vote on December, I believe it's December 3rd this year, everything is correct and every vote is properly accounted for. That sort of, but that we're kind of we're in the background of elections. We're not there. We're not the ones that you get your ballot from.
Mm-hmm. So 2 questions. One is, it sounds like you help reaffirm the certification on each of the local levels of the election results, because that then funnels through the statewide elections. Is that true? Is that how that would work as far as the Board of Elections correct. With the local level? Mm-hmm.
That's correct.
And then
okay. So for example, there are also a lot of county offices that will be on the ballot this year, and those are administered strictly through the local governments. So Don's office certifies the local results. We certify all judges throughout the state, and then all state legislature and any statewide offices.
Great. Well, we appreciate that update. I'll save the other question because I'll probably ask each one to speak on. It's more on the technology side of things. But Clerk Lesko, City Clerk Frank Lesko, he's with us, and he helps more on the local level as far as the city elections. But I asked him to join us, you know, from that perspective, but also, you know, his service to the public, a lot of permitting and things of that nature flows through his office. So appreciate you joining us today. And I like the W in the background for the Cubs, I assume. With regards to, if you give us an update on your office and the challenges you faced with regards to the coronavirus and anything you'd like to share, we'd appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for inviting me. And thanks to everyone out there who's listening. I appreciate it. And Mayor, thanks for, yeah, the W is important to me. And we've had a couple the last few days, so that's kind of nice. Sorry, Cardinal fans. But yeah, it's been a challenging time for us simply because of the fact that when you don't have interaction with the public one-on-one, it makes the job sometimes a little more difficult. What we did is we have stayed 100% operational since the very beginning. We haven't missed one day, 1 hour. And it's very nice that we've been able to do that. We've been able to have people work remotely from home. But in the office, we've staffed the office with at least one person every day. And so we've been able to keep things going. And we handle birth and death certificates also. We handle business licensing. We handle, the liquor licenses and that type of things, and FOIAs, and they continue to come in. And the big thing that we do is we have to deal with the city council and the mayor all the time because all the ordinances that are coming through, and they haven't slowed down one iota. They've kept it geared up. The ordinances have kept coming, so we've been able to greet the public through Zoom. We've been able to have the meetings through Zoom, which was very enlightening and I think very impressive the way that our people in Tom Chief today, shout out to him for continuing to get us all online here and help us out technology-wise. But been able to have those meetings and have people from the public still be involved and to see, I think it was a very good thing because it's been a mental strain on everybody to go through this COVID process. And it's very nice to know that your government's still working, still making things happen, and keeping you safe. So I think that's a really good thing. And that's one of the challenges. Now, one of the things that we have that's been very nice for us is, as you can see the windows behind me, we're right on the corner of the building. So we are 20 foot from an exit door. So we're actually able to work with the funeral homes, with constituents, and we've been able to set up appointments right outside the door. So within 20 feet, we can walk from our office to the outside and service the public. So that was a huge thing for us, and we're very lucky in that sense. And as I said, to stay on top of operations with the ordinances and everything that's going on with the city, it's kept us busy. We've been lucky enough not to have anybody infected in our office. We've taken precautionary measures with our office outside. The public would pretty much walk in and there was just a counter and it was open to anyone coming through the door of the building. We took some steps to enclose that with some windows and make it safer for not only the employees that were working, but for the public coming in. We have required masks. But people have been very, very accommodating in wearing the masks, and I haven't heard really any complaints. And what really is surprising to me, I go along with Don Gray, we haven't slowed down one bit. The requests for the birth and death certificates, obviously that's something that keeps going on. But the questions for business licensing, the questions about FOIAs, everything has just been as if nothing is going on. So I think that's a real positive thing. It keeps us busy, it keeps the city operational, and hopefully we're holding up the mayor's office and the aldermanic scene also so that they're able to complete their efforts and their job to reach out and do their work for the public.
Yeah, and that's one of the challenges we have, especially at City Council. You can explain the parameters associated with the meetings because we have restricted attendance. Of course, any attendance at an event is supposed to be 50 or less. It depends on the size of the area. But if you could explain for the public with regards to meetings, that process of an individual that might want to come to address the City Council or just come to attend.
Okay, if the person wants to come to attend, what they do is call the clerk's office, put their name down. We keep a list going, and we have to monitor the staff and the people from the police department, the fire department, everybody that's going to be there. We keep an account, and we keep it at 50 or under. We ask you to wear a mask. We ask you when you're in attendance to stay 6 feet apart. We also have taken major steps to sanitize everything that's in the offices. We actually work hand in hand with the building manager to make sure that it's done before. And last night, Nate Bottom, who is the director of Public Works, actually volunteered to sanitize the podium in between speakers. But people can call our office. We'll schedule them, and availability. If we go beyond the 50, they're still invited to come down to the municipal building. They're asked to stay out on our patio. And as openings would open up, we'll call down to security and they'll allow them to come in. If they don't have a mask, the security does have masks, extra masks to give to the constituents as they come in. But it's been challenging within the office, within the council chambers. We have added plexiglass dividers between all the aldermen, and it's worked out pretty well. We've had a little bit of an issue with being able to hear, but beyond that, it's worked out perfectly, and the aldermen have adjusted, and people have been wearing masks. A lot of times when they speak, they don't, because it's muffled and hard time for them to speak with it on. So they're taking it off, but everybody's really adhered to the request, and it's been a real positive thing for the city, and I think it shows a real heart and a love for Springfield. And so, Mayor, we're just moving ahead and trying to keep everything moving in a positive nature and making the best of a not so good situation.
No doubt. And one of the things that helped all of us through this situation is the use of technology. And I think City Clerk Lesko touched on it to a degree, but that's why you were talking, Matt, you talked about 2016, and it seems like an issue that came up. Of course, it wasn't a pleasant situation at that point in time, but if you could speak to how that might have benefited where we're dealing with today. It sounds like a lot of things got upgraded, and you looked at different aspects associated with the security part, but how has technology in that helped you with regards to dealing with the pandemic and the services you provide currently through the election process? So Matt, if you'd share that with us.
Mm-hmm. Well, as far as what happened back in 2016, if there's a silver lining to it, it's that Illinois was already, back in July 2016, the idea of Russia or a foreign country interfering with an election was just starting to get talked about. This was right at the time when the DNC email hacking was starting to kind of filter into the conversation. And then, the election happened, and it really was in 2017 that we started hearing about, the concrete efforts that had been proven that Russia had been trying to interfere. Now, it took a while before the Justice Department formally charged a Russian with what happened in our office. That didn't happen until July of 2018, but throughout the calendar year of 2017, that it became more of an open topic and accepted that Russia had tried to do various things. They tried to break in all over to a lot of government systems, not just elections. They happened to get into ours. Luckily, there were really no consequences from that, other than the public perception and the questions that they put into the public's mind of, is our information secure? Is there integrity in our voting system? We really made a concerted effort ahead of the 2018 election to let people know that, listen, when we talk about cybersecurity, we're talking about voter registration. We're not talking about any kind of remote hacking of your polling place. That is, the scenario for that to happen is so far-fetched that it is very nearly impossible. We never say impossible, but the actual stealing of votes is not something that's ever discussed in a cybersecurity discussion. But we are very well aware now that the goal of Russia is not so much to steal votes, it's to erode the confidence of the American public in the election system. Now, if so, getting back to the Cyber Navigator program that I talked about earlier, we are very well aware that if there's any kind of a cyber incident in any county office around the state, it's going to be a national story in no time. That, as far as that goes, that could happen in any state. You could have a county office in any state. If there's any type of cyber incident, the first question that's going to be asked is it the Russians? Is it going to affect the vote? What's going on? We saw what happened in Iowa at the Iowa caucuses when the state Democratic Party was trying out a new app and hadn't been properly tested. And there was doubt that the votes were going to be counted correctly, that the caucus results were going to come in correctly. But what ended up happening was they couldn't use this app to transmit their results. It was a couple hours late. What happened during that time? Rumors flew everywhere. So we are very well aware now that any kind of delay, any kind of question, if lines build up outside of a polling place somewhere, there's the potential for someone to get on social media and start posting on Facebook or Twitter, hey, this has been hacked. Is it Russia? We need to be aware of that. And we've been working with, through our national association that we're part of, we've been working directly with Facebook and Twitter. We have, through our Cyber Navigator program, we have an employee working in the State Terrorism and Intelligence Center and through the state police so that we know if any type of misinformation gets put out on social media, we can know about it fairly quick, those taken down, liaison with Facebook. All of that stuff has come into play. You know, the biggest issue that we were facing going into 2020 wasn't really cybersecurity in terms of remote hacking of our systems. It's disinformation through social engineering on Facebook, like what we saw in 2016. If anybody watching this saw the Netflix documentary, The Great Hack, that went a long way toward informing people about the way that Russia specifically can use social media to engineer and really target a specific message to specific voters in the United States. They're very sophisticated on that. So our biggest concern going into this election cycle had been informing people to be smart social media consumers. If you see something on social media that's not from a trusted source, or frankly, if something sounds crazy, it very likely is. Don't share that stuff until you can check it out. Get on our website, elections.il.gov. If you want to find out when are polling places open, when does early voting start, where can I vote early, all of that kind of stuff. That was our biggest concern. Then COVID came along. Now what we're faced with is getting the message out to voters that if you want to have a 100% COVID-free voting experience, vote by mail. And speaking of voting by mail, get that application in today to your local election authority so that they can get your ballot back to you. They start going out September 24th. So it's not inconceivable that you can have a ballot in your hands before October gets here. And once you get that ballot, vote it and send it back as soon as you can. That way, if there's a problem with your ballot, your local election authority can get in touch with you so you can fix it and get your vote counted. You won't have to worry about any delays with the Postal Service if you get it in early enough. You know, we had that big lot of publicity with the letter from the Postal Service that we got 2 weeks ago, basically saying You know, Illinois has a law that allows voters to apply for a vote by mail ballot up to 5 days before an election. And the Postal Service was telling us that, you know, that really is going to put a strain on us, and we may not be able to get those ballots to the voters before Election Day. Well, that's not a new message here at the State Board of Elections, and I'm sure Don can say the same thing. We preach that every year. We always tell people, if you want to vote by mail, don't wait until the last minute to apply for your ballot. You're putting yourself at risk that 5-day window might not allow the mail to get your ballot to you. And then you may have to end up, you're not going to lose your vote. But if your mail ballot doesn't reach you by Election Day, your alternative is you'll need to go to your polling place, tell the election judges, yes, I applied, but it hasn't reached me yet. You sign an affidavit, then they'll give you a ballot and you can vote. And then if for some reason your mail ballot arrives, it's going to be voided. Or actually what will happen then is that as soon as you cast your vote in the polling place, your vote by mail ballot is voided. So it's not going to count. But, you know, this year, kind of the concern about Russian interference and all of that seems to have gone by the wayside now, and justifiably so, because we want to get the message out to people that you can vote safely. If you want to do it 100% safely, do it by mail. Otherwise, if people like to vote in person, think about voting early. That starts September 24th. If you get in there, you know, most people now know who they're going to vote for. You can get in there on September 24th, September 25th, and get your vote cast early. The crowds are going to be much lower. Go at an off-peak time. We just want to avoid crowding on Election Day if we possibly can. We want to do anything we can to mitigate that. I just this week finished signing off on some advertising copy that is going to start hitting the TV airwaves and radio stations throughout the state starting August 30th with that very message. You have the option of voting by mail this year. Apply now, don't wait. If you want to vote in person, do it early. Don't put yourself at risk. If you don't like the idea of going to a crowded polling place on Election Day, you don't have to. You can still vote in person. Just do it early. Do it as early as you possibly can.
And Don can speak to that. Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yep. Don, if you could speak to that as far as the importance of that, but also anything you want to share on the technology front or changes you've seen due to the coronavirus and the election process.
Yeah, I think Matt's absolutely right. You know, there's real similarities in the earlier discussions and the environment that we were dealing with when it came to cybersecurity and kind of securing the platform from the potentialities of hacking or disruption in the confidence of the system to what we're dealing with today with COVID-19. You know, I spend a tremendous amount of time educating about what the various options are that are going to be safe, secure, and healthy for our voters to be able to cast ballots in light of the environment that we're dealing with. You know, we're working to establish confidence in procedures, measures, and opportunity and access to the voter registration process, as well as, you know, your options to cast ballots, you know, every day. And we have been since the March primary. And in advance of the March primary, we learned a lot, you know, as the COVID pandemic abruptly came upon us. We're equipped now and better knowledge about the coronavirus to, you know, still continue to provide our services and have a successful, accurate, you know, election full of integrity and being healthy for our public. And, you know, it's really evolving. You know, the legislature signed, or the governor signed, the legislature provided new opportunity, you know, in this election to put a greater emphasis on the vote by mail. There's great confidence in knowing that how Illinois operates our vote by mail system really didn't change. that how we're operating today is a greater exposure and marketing about the opportunity in light of COVID-19. You know, we have just recently sent applications to every registered voter of Sangamon County that's cast a ballot at least since 2018 as a way to put that application in front of the voter saying, hey, we know that this election could potentially be different. There's uncertainty to what the climate would look like in the environment as we get closer to November 3rd. You know, if you feel this is the best option for you with these concerns about safety and health, then utilize this application. What's great about that is that you have to application yourself into the system. You are making an acknowledgement that you want to be able to, that you want to vote by mail. This isn't sending around ballots to every individual that are out there with no guarantees if it'll be used and used by whom. You know, Illinois in Sangamon County has had good success and great experience level on operating vote by mail. You know, we go at great lengths of ensuring the integrity of the process, that we're properly issuing ballots to those that requested them, that they're being validated, that they are who they are, that in receipt of their ballot and return of their ballot to the election authority, that they are also being validated, that it was the individual that made the request that returned that ballot, that they're an active registered voter of Sangamon County, and that the materials are filled out appropriately for us to be able to tabulate that ballot. You know, that hasn't changed. That's the same process. It's actually added an additional judge to the process to review. We are a signature state. We look at signatures, the signature of the registration to the application to receive your ballot by mail, to the certification envelope that has your return ballot in it, all must match. And in concurrence from these 3 election judges that they do, your ballot's going to be validated and tabulated through a machine. So there's a lot we do to ensure that you know, one man or woman is making a request, that one man and woman is voting, and we take it seriously, and we are working hard to make sure that this is done right, that it's done appropriately, and that Sangamon County will have an accurate, accountable, and transparent election results on November 3rd when polls close. But that's not the only option. You know, there's a misconception out there that everything's being transferred to vote by mail. You know, no, that's not true. You know, you still have opportunities to be able to cast your ballot during the early vote window, which starts September 24th here at the Sangamon County Complex, and cast ballots. There will be an election day. We will have an election day, and we are working closely with, you know, the Illinois Department of Public Health, the Sangamon County Department of Public Health, the State Board of Elections, other colleagues, healthcare professionals, to provide for the best practices for the health and safety of not only the voters that are casting ballots, but the staff and the poll workers that are facilitating the election on election day and early vote. We're putting in place the necessary barriers that we've learned from the virus. You know, masks will be worn by all poll workers. It's an absolute requirement because we're all working within, you know, 6 feet of each other for a long period of time. There will be face shields available to poll workers as an additional barrier, you know, to give them confidence that we're giving them real good resources. There'll be all types of sanitizing materials that we're utilizing, from liquid hand sanitizing gel to the sanitizing wipes of all of the counters and surfaces that poll workers and voters come into contact alike. This is both in the early voting process here at the complex and on election day. You know, there is a structured routine of sanitation in polling places that will be followed by all poll workers, so that we're continually sanitizing the environment. We're also using spray aerosol sanitizing equipment that will be giving an additional measure. You know, we will be articulating, you know, what we expect of the public, you know, that to adhere by social distancing guidelines. The polling locations have been set up to adhere to social distancing and the health of voters. So adhere to that. We're encouraging the use of sanitizing products. We are strongly encouraging voters to wear masks. You know, we certainly want, you know, voters to do their part as election workers are doing their part, but we understand the intricacies that we cannot deny access and or the constitutional right to be able to cast ballots just because someone's not wearing a mask. But, you know, we're doing our part to provide all what's required for the health and safety, and combine together, if we work together collectively as a team, from the election authority to poll workers to voters themselves, I know we'll be able to do it. We accomplished it in March when we were first learning about the COVID pandemic. We're equipped with much more knowledge. You know, I think the important thing to know is whatever is the most comfortable for you in your unique situation, utilize that form of voting and vote, because we're doing everything we can to provide those opportunities that are safe, secure, healthy, always thinking of you first and in mind, so that our democratic process can work, that it can be done right and it will be done right, and we'll have an accurate, accountable result of this election come polls close November 3rd.
Yeah, I did receive a few questions. I'm going to consolidate a couple because it hits to the point you mentioned, Don, with regards to accessibility is one. With registration, if someone's not registered, how soon can, I mean, I know they can go up now, but can they go on election day and actually get registered and vote? And then the other thing would be the accountability aspect. When are all the votes counted as far as absentee or early voting? How's that process work? If you could share some light on that, and any of the other two can jump in if they would like to. But Don, if you would address that as far as the registration part and then the counting of the different ways to vote.
Really, at no other time in Illinois' history, you have more opportunity to be able to register to vote and cast ballots. You know, registration is still open today, and there are various different forms that you can utilize that's best for you. Of course, we've got the traditional paper registration. You know, if you want to have us send you a mail-in form, that's a paper document with a return envelope, you would call the elections office at 753-8683. We'll be able to send you that paper registration. You send back to us, we'll get you registered to vote. We also have, Illinois has an online system of voter registration. This has really been very popular to the younger generation, and really at all generations that are equipped to understand technology. You can go to the Sangamon County Clerk's website, sangamoncountyclerk.com, or the state of Illinois, and you can utilize, you know, an online application of voter registration. It requires only that you have a valid Illinois driver's license or state ID. If you have that, you can utilize that to register to vote. It's a very popular form. Deputy registrars are an older feature, but are still available. You know, the party apparatus has deputy registrars that register people to vote. There are election stakeholders within Sangamon County, such as the League of Women's Voters, you know, a Farm Bureau, you know, other groups such as that have people that are equipped to be able to register people to vote. That's certainly another that you can go through. So if all of that you weren't able to, you know, get and take care of when ballots are being cast and voter registration closes, you can register to vote at the election authority. It's called grace registration and balloting. You can register here at the Sangamon County Complex. Takes 2 forms of ID, one with current address, and we'll register you on site and also issue a ballot that you must cast immediately on site. And if you can't even get that and you miss that window and you still want to take part, you can be registered to vote on election day. Sangamon County facilitates same-day voter registration in every polling location, as well as the Sangamon County Clerk's office on election day. Same standard, 2 forms of ID, one with the current address, and we'll get you registered to vote, and we'll get you into the location of where you would receive your proper ballot. And the critical part is to know that if you've had a name change, if you have moved, if you've never been registered before in Sangamon County, if you want to vote in the November 3rd general election, you must be a registered voter, a qualified registered voter. And we'll be able to make that happen for you. So talk a little bit about results and how ballots are tabulated and how they're accounted for and when you should expect them, etc. So during the vote by mail process, when we send out ballots and ballots returned to us, we disclose to the parties and the public a routine of election judges that validate and tabulate those ballots. Now, they're being validated that the signatures match, that it's coming back from the voter that requested it, and that the paperwork has all been appropriately filled out, which is the certification envelope. And if it is, election judges then remove the ballot from the envelope. They initial the top that activates the ballot, and they run it through a tabulating machine. Just like any voter would during the early vote process when they come in, they sign an application. If they're actively registered to vote, we compare their signatures. They are who they are. They mark their ballots, and they run them through the tabulator. On election day, you present yourself, you sign your application in the polling place. The judges check your signatures to make sure they match. You mark your ballot, and you run your ballot through the tabulator. Now, none of those results through the three means that are on the data cards within those tabulators are not run or returned to the election office for an upload to the public of the total cumulative results until after 7 o'clock on election eve. So even though ballots had been validated and tabulated by vote by mail and early vote at the election authority earlier, those data cards and those ballots that are being tabulated as they're putting through, the results don't get uploaded or removed, really, or run or removed until after polls close at 7 o'clock. So the public is the first to see these returns. And then the difference is, in Sangamon County, our history is that we report vote by mail tabulated returns and early returns first when polls close at 7 o'clock. We transitioned to that 2 election cycles ago. It's been very popular. So that first gets released at 7 o'clock. And then as judges returned by precinct the tabulated cards of the tabulating machines from the polling place, they're internally validated by us, and then they are uploaded one at a time as they're returned. As every precinct come back and 100% precincts report, at that moment of the last precinct reporting and we upload, you've got 100% of results of every ballot that have been cast in Sangamon County by mail, early, and on election day. And there's one additional piece I'll touch upon, which has been more widely reported, that is a concern and a challenge of the election authority. Illinois law states that any ballot that's postmarked the day of the election, at least no later than the day of the election, and returned no later than the 14th day after the election, so 2 weeks after, can be a validated, qualified vote to be added to the returns on the 14th day. This is the part where Matt talked about from the State Board of Elections, that it's imperative that those that have mail ballots to expedite that ballot. Cast it, mark your ballot and return it as soon as possible, because there is a potential that if you procrastinate and we don't receive that ballot back until after polls close and it's properly postmarked, that those don't get added to the return until the 14th day after the election. And if there's a larger, more substantial amount of those ballots waiting to be added to the returns in close elections, that could make a difference. That could make a difference in not knowing what a result could be in a contested race in Sangamon County the eve of. And we've had some experiences to that in most recent history. Ward 2 is a great experience of that, Ward 2 automatic race, where it was decided by returned ballots after the fact that were properly postmarked, validated as legitimate, and added to the returns after. So it is really important, since we've got a substantially more historic amount of requests for ballots already, that, and we expect that to continue to keep going in this election, that ballots properly get returned within the proper timing.
Yeah, that's a good point, especially with the Ward 2 race. It's important that every vote does count, and you should be cognizant of how you sign and how the ballots are taken care of, because we want every vote to count, and it does come into play. And then, Matt, I guess if you could speak from the statewide, and I didn't know in this election, especially with social distancing, are a lot of areas looking at maybe gymnasiums or bigger spaces to hold the polling places, or Have you experienced that or have knowledge of that? Or are they just the traditional places that hasn't really changed much?
Well, no, that changed a lot, at least as far as on election day, on November 3rd. One of the things in the new election bill was that that November 3rd, 2020 is a state holiday, so all schools are closed. And also in that new law, school districts are required to make their school facilities available to local election authorities for use as polling places on election day. Now that's big, because what we saw on March 17th was many places that had been scheduled to be polling places, they withdrew on literally the day before the election or on the weekend before. It was a tremendous problem in Chicago. They had 185, I think, locations that were supposed to be polling places that told them at the last minute, no, we're not going to be available for you. This year on election day, you'll probably have a lot more schools being used as polling places. That's important because schools are ideal as polling places. They're ADA compliant, they're big, they have long hallways that can be used to keep voters distanced properly. They also have good transportation systems coming in and out, because every day you've got buses or cars dropping students off. That's an ideal setup if a local election authority wants to have curbside voting, which is also allowed this year, where voters don't have to leave their cars. They can, election judge gets their information, they move up, they'll get a ballot vote at the election judge, then takes that and runs it through the tabulator. So you'll see on election day, a lot more schools will be used for polling places. It's, you're always early voting on the election authority's office. Kind of depends on where you're at, in what county you're in, whether you have other options for off-site early voting. You'll also have expanded hours for early voting. And the election authorities are free, if they want this year, they can add hours as they see fit. So that's one of the things you will see. If you're going to vote on election day, November 3rd, you may be voting in a school building, whereas that had kind of become, that used to be very, very much standard, and then that kind of fell out of favor because it disrupts the school day and then security concerns and whatnot. So for this year, to make sure that there are plenty of locations to be used, the state came in and passed this special law. So you may see a lot of schools being used for that purpose.
As a good action by the legislator to make that happen. I'd ask any of you to weigh in on, there's been a lot of discussion real quick on U.S. Post Office and, the boxes being removed. And those are the ones on location. But I know here locally, the West Side branch was closed for a little bit. The best thing to do, of course, is to go to the post office and mail your ballot. But do any of you have any knowledge of, with regards to U.S. Postal Service and any changes that we've seen locally?
I think you put your finger on it perfectly. It's all about knowledge and what it is that you know. So, yeah, look, the United States Postal Service, and I give them great credit for this. I think this is kind of a very good faith effort of disclosing the potential conflicts of their delivery standards to the realities of Illinois' procedures and timelines for vote by mail. They've gotten out early to us to say, look, our delivery standards are in conflict, and we want you to be aware that they are in conflict so that you can properly communicate, educate your constituencies to what their recommended timelines are for the return of ballots. And, that's something we seriously need, to take under serious consideration to, how we properly educate the public to these recommended standards and inform them. And Sangamon County is going to do just that. We're going to work off of United States Postal Service's recommended standards, even though there's a lot more opportunity available by Illinois law, and still uphold all that. But we want them to know that there's conflicts that exist and what is best for them in the return of those ballots. The foremost in my mind of that is the conflict in when they're saying to properly send something back so that it can be postmarked no later than election day. on Illinois law says have a postmark and you can do it on election day. The Illinois Postal Service is saying send it to us, send back the ballot to the election authority no later than a week in advance of the election. So you'll see Sangamon County's election office, disclosing within the materials of our vote by mail packet that, get your ballot back to us right away. We encourage you to do so just from a procedural processing point for us because we're doing more, but certainly don't do it any later than October 27th as the recommended piece from the United States Postal Service to get to us. And that'll be fully disclosed on the return envelopes, et cetera, going above and beyond. It also, prompts us.
Yeah, real quick. If someone, do you need judges and volunteers? If so, how do they get in touch with you, or how would they do that if you need them? That was a quick question that's coming up since we're up against the clock.
We're doing very well on judges, but we could always use more. We have a great constituency that steps up, and we appreciate that. We'll need vote by mail, internal vote by mail processing judges as well. Reach out to us at the election authority. We can give you more detail. But I do want to press upon one point, Mayor, about ballot return options, because it's been widely discussed, and we're talking to all the stakeholders, locally about it. Both the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, of election interest groups, the State Board of Elections, my colleagues, et cetera. We all recognize that there's conflicts and that, more ballot return measures are needed. And we're analyzing those here in Sangamon County. We're coming up with additional ballot return measures that will give, Sangamon County voters more access and opportunity to return their ballots. And we're still surveying what those opportunities may be. If the concept is the possibility of a drop box or curbside delivery of ballots on election day. And we'll continue to have those conversations, make decisions soon about that, and then thoroughly disclose those options to the public so that, everybody has great opportunity, regardless of what form that they choose to cast ballots, so that it's done appropriately, they're thoroughly informed, and they'll be able to successfully cast their ballot.
Great, that's good. And then this is just closing comments from each one. You just take a minute to wrap up. And how challenging is it for each of your offices to serve in a nonpartisan fashion, even though we're in this kind of partisan world at times? If you could speak to that, and anything else you'd like to say real quick. So City Clerk Lesko, we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Matt Dietrich, and then Don Gray, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, really not challenging. I think that the Democrat and the Republican Party both worked really well in our office to get the signatures in. It was a very smooth thing. A little bump here and there, yes, but it worked out really well. And I think there was cooperation all the way around. And I think more than anything, everybody just wants to know what the rules are and make sure that everyone is following them. But working with Don Gray's office for the recount, it was a very professional office, Don. I thank you, and it made the operation very simple, and it was great to bring it to fruition and get away.
Well, thank you. Thanks for being part of this discussion.
Thank
Matt?
you. I appreciate being here, Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, yeah. The State Board of Elections is actually governed by an 8-member board. It's 4 appointed Democrats and 4 appointed Republicans. So any policy change or any major initiative that the Board of Elections takes up has to be approved by at least 5 of our board members. So you can't have one party dominating over the other. But most of the votes that they take seem to be unanimous from my experience having been there. And of course, we are nonpartisan. We were established in 1970 to make sure that elections are administered by an agency that is not under the auspices of an elected official. And all of us employees at the Board of Elections, we are prohibited from making political contributions. We can't make public political statements. We can't have yard signs in our yard, bumper stickers in our cars. We can't sign petitions. It's kind of handy. So when I see
that is nice.
whatever member of the Langfelder family comes around our neighborhood, I can politely say, I'm sorry.
Sorry, can't do it.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much and enlightening the public. And then Don, you'd like to wrap up any comments with regards to the service in general and how challenging that is?
Yeah, and I want to say the same, for the Sangamon County Elections Office, partisanship should never be a part of how we facilitate our services. We have a responsibility to provide for a fair, free opportunity for all people who are qualified registered voters of Sangamon County to be able to register to vote and cast ballots. We have a responsibility to provide for the greatest of services that we can to our best ability for all people, regardless of your political background or persuasion. So we'll continue to work very hard to provide Sangamon County voters our very best in keeping in mind their safety, their security, and their health, and access and opportunity to our democratic process every day. And I encourage you to call us with any questions or any concerns that you may ever have, because educating the public about how we operate and what we do is a critical component to the integrity of our process and the confidence of a finalized tabulated result of an election. And Mayor, the forums like this are a big part of getting that word out, and I appreciate your invite to talk a little bit about our jobs and how we do them and how we service very well.
Well, thanks for all of you for participating, and you, Don, too. We appreciate everybody's input. Thanks to Julia Frederick, Communications Director, and Tom Chi, our communications person associated with technology, and they've really put all this together. But for us, as we move forward, it's important to vote. I do it in person. It's easy because probably I wouldn't get the ballot in time, or put it out there in time. So if you are voting by mail, be sure to drop it off at the mail post office, and move that direction. The other thing is not only the voting, but also the census. Be sure to take the time, 5 minutes, to fill out the census, or tell your friends and family to be sure to do that, because that does impact our representation in Washington with regards to our congressional districts, as well as dollars we would receive. So it's important to take the time to fill out the census information. That's coming up to the end of August, I believe. And then the other aspect, again, with the pandemic, we all want to stay in phase 4, move forward in a positive manner. So support your local restaurants and businesses, but keep that social distance, wear your face covering around your nose and mouth, and by doing so, we'll be in a better position and make it through until vaccine is developed and really can rebound from this strongly. So we appreciate everybody's dignity and respecting one another, supporting one another, because that's what it's all about. And always remember that we're always trying to make today better than yesterday and tomorrow better than today. So thank you for participating, and we'll see you next Wednesday at noon.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.